So something I've come to observe is that basically everybody has had the experience of operating from mixed motives, where we don't really want to do the right thing, but we do the right thing anyway. And why do we do it? Because we think there's something in it for us. We're basically bribing ourselves, saying, well, if I can do this thing for this other person, they might give something to me in return. Haha, wouldn't that be great? The problem is, as a Christian, we know that God actually cares about our hearts. Paul says it, that God wants us to circumcise our hearts, not our bodies. So, how do you resolve this? How do you, are you a good person if you're doing things from mixed motives, or are you a bad person? How do you make sense of this? Well, what I want to show you in this video is that, in fact, God can use mixed motives as a starting place. That they can feed us for a time, but they're part of a process that allows us to go and eventually become the person God thinks that we can actually be. I know how we tell stories about a friend of mine. Well, this actually is a story about a friend, a guy I've known for a long time. And at this time, he and his wife had been married, I don't know, kind of 5 to 10 years, probably in that range of time. And there was one of those big romantic holidays coming up. I forget whether it was their anniversary or Valentine's Day, something like that. And anyway, my buddy, he started putting together this grand plan of how he was really going to knock the socks off his wife's feet, right? He was going to have this great dinner plan, a fancy restaurant, some jewelry, follow, some dessert at this fancy place, stars in the sky. I mean, it was all worked out. He had the master plan. And I kept hearing about this plan for weeks in advance of how he was really going to impress his wife. Well, the day eventually comes where the plan is executed, and I see him the next day, and he trudges into work, and he's sad and kind of mopey, and I'm like, hey man, what went wrong? How did the plan? Come on, what happened? And he just looks with me, these sorrowful eyes. He says, well, basically, I did what I said I was going to do. Yeah. And he said, yeah, I took her to dinner, jewelry, dessert, romantic walk, the whole thing. Well, what's the problem? Well, the problem was that he didn't get, shall we say, the physical affection he was hoping to get in return for all his grand gestures. Now, he's certainly not the first guy on earth to have done something for his girl in hopes to get something in return, but he got nothing, and it brought to light just kind of the motivation he was working from there. It wasn't pure motivation. He had clearly a case of mixed motives, right? He was doing all these good things for her, but he had his own agenda that he was hoping for as well. And the reality is, this is a very common thing. And we can see this illustrated symbolically in scriptures. Believe it or not, it's the Elijah story. That's in the first book of Kings, chapter 17. Elijah just kind of pops on the scene, right? There's no Moses type birth story or Samson or Samuel, nothing like that. He just pops on the scene, and he tells the evil King Ahab, there's not going to be any more rain until I say so. And then he runs. And he goes off in the desert, and he drinks from this brook. That's where he's going to get his water from. But his food, God tells him, the food, you're going to get that from ravens. The ravens are going to feed you. Now, birds in general represent thoughts because they're, above us. They're higher than us. So birds represent our thoughts. And ravens in particular, they don't represent good thoughts. They represent false ideas because ravens are nasty birds. So we have this picture of Elijah, the good guy, the prophet of the Lord, being fed by false ideas. This is a picture like my buddy who is being fed, right? He's being nourished by the idea that I'm going to get something in return. It's false. It's not a good thing. The raven's not a good bird. But nevertheless, it does propel him along to do the right things. just as this food from the raven nourishes us in our life. So this isn't really a good state, because as we look in the scriptural story, eventually the brook dries up and the ravens stop feeding us. And it's telling us that eventually we're going to have to move on from the state of operating from mixed motives. Eventually, we're going to actually have to operate by doing the right things for the right reason. Well, why is that? Well, because you find that mixed motives really aren't sustainable. If my buddy kept doing these grand gestures for his wife, and he kept doing them with that same goal in mind, and he didn't get it, how long is he going to keep doing these grand gestures? Well, I'll tell you, he did it once. He didn't do it again. So, it's not sustainable because he can't keep that motivation up. But on the contrary, if he's operating without that need for reciprocity of some sort, he can keep doing these things because he's got pure motives that say, I don't care what I get back, all I'm trying to do is make her happy. And I think we've all experienced this kind of thing, right? You've done something great for somebody else. Well, maybe you've mowed the grass, you've done the dishes, you've helped somebody out in some project around the house, you've knitted them a sweater or a quilt or something. You've done something what you think is really nice. You put a lot of effort into it, and you didn't get the attaboy you were looking for or the attagirl you were looking for. You didn't get the kind of appreciation, and just deflates you. Sure, it's nice to be showered with gratitude, but if that's what we need, are we really operating from pure motives? So it's not sustainable. And so what we're going to do over the next few weeks is, this is a program called Living Courageously that we're working through, and it goes through the Elijah story over 7 weeks. So I'll be doing one of these videos each week for 7 weeks, and we're going to look at how the Lord takes us from operating from mixed motives to a place where we're actually able to live courageously, doing the right thing for the right reasons, and we are going to be happier and better off for it. So I hope you'll join me on this program as we go through it over the next 7 weeks. Thanks so much for watching. All the best to you. God bless.